Hi, and welcome to the channel Business Analyst Perspective. Today, we're going to talk about writing software specifications in an agile world. Okay, let us first try to understand what is agile. Agile is a development process based on iterative and incremental approach, and Scrum is one of the implementations of agile. In Scrum, incremental builds are delivered to the customer every 1 to 4 weeks, which is called a sprint. And one of the primary jobs of a business analyst in a sprint is to document that particular feature, that particular functionality which is getting built in the sprint. Agile Manifesto clearly prioritizes working software over comprehensive documentation, which is a major departure for the BAs working in the waterfall model. Here, the focus is on quickly completing light documentation to accompany with the feature being developed in a sprint. Now, talking about the specification progression, often it is not possible to complete the documentation of the entire functionality in a single sprint. The BAs have to write chunks of specification corresponding to the particular feature built in the sprint. This means that the entire specification might get completed in multiple sprints, which could then be fully signed off by the corresponding stakeholder. Writing functional specifications in an agile setup is a challenge of a different kind. You no longer have the luxury of time. You no longer can be sure with a specification as a final document. You are not sure how comprehensive the specification should be. If you are a BA who has been molded in a waterfall setup, it can be quite a change from the usual process. Documenting a feature change request or a new user interface in Agile model requires a perspective which allows for change or feedback to creep in at a later stage. Let's look at some of the typical challenges that is often encountered. The first one and the most obvious one is writing specifications for small chunks of development. Normally, in agile mode, a big feature or a functionality is broken into smaller parts and development is spread across multiple sprints. This means that in order for a sprint user story to get accepted, the BA has to quickly write specifications for that small chunk and get an agreement over it. This modular way of documentation is a big departure from the traditional way of documentation, wherein you can think and dwell over the impacts over all the end-to-end flows. The second one is writing specifications parallel to ongoing development. This is the problem which brings out the most conflicts amongst team members. The sprint starts, and in parallel, the BA is quickly writing specifications while the developers are starting to create the design. In the best case scenario, the business analyst passes the specification to the developer just in time for him to start coding. In the worst case scenario, the BA gets stuck in cycles of clarification and changes, and the developer has to change or modify the code much later on once the final confirmation comes. Third one is the review process for specifications. The review process in Agile often includes stakeholders like the development team and the QA team, apart from the usual ones. This is because Agile is a very collaborative model of development which encourages the entire team to own up and question the delivery. It then becomes very important that it should be reviewed by all the stakeholders, including the dev and the QA. This helps in catching some obvious design mistakes and also gives an opportunity for the QA to design testing strategy at an earlier stage. However, this also means more and more walkthrough sessions and more context switch for the team members. One of the interesting challenges is rewriting specifications as per the demo feedback. In Agile, the demo is where the fate of the deliverable is decided. If the customers are not happy about something, or if there is some fine tuning required, the BA has to go back and change specifications. This means more and more rounds of sign off. All this eats the bandwidth of the BA and increases more follow up. The last one is how verbose should the specifications be? This is a question which the BA asks of himself and his team. Now, Agile Manifesto's value says working software over comprehensive documentation. But are organizations really prepared to ditch the huge specifications and opt for leaner ways of writing specifications? Well, some are and some aren't. The BA is often unsure about the depth in which he or she should write specifications, so that no alternate flows, out of scope points, and impacts are missed out. And it should not take a really long time to write and get a sign off on the specifications. With all the challenges, BAs have to be smarter and more proactive in managing the specifications in Agile. Some of the best practices that I advocate for writing specifications in Agile are consistent, crisp template for writing specifications. Devise a way to make the specifications crisp and compact. If you have just moved to Agile, revisit the specification template and create a lean one. Make sure that the BA community in your unit collaborates on this and keep your managers informed that this will be the new way of writing specifications. Inform them clearly of the pros and cons behind this so that they are not caught unawares at a later stage. Clear traceability between user story and specification. Goes without saying that all user stories should trace back to the specification. Getting the specification reviewed early by dev and QA. Find time to give a walkthrough of the specification to them, preferably at a time of their choosing. Always decide on a sign-off date for the consolidated spec. This still remains one of the key aspects of the business, the sign-off of the specs. So every BA still has to make sure that there's a clear sign-off on the specification. In the end, make sure that you factor all the bandwidth required to go back and forth the specification sign-off. This helps in estimating the time it took for the specification to be completed in its entirety. With these best practices, I hope the PAs can effectively overcome the challenges of writing specifications in an agile world. Thank you.